pearls. And Kinari was the word was used for laces and edgings on clothes. So this was where priceless jewels, gems, necklaces, all kinds of things, embellishment for clothes would be sold. Again, it has now jewelry is still sold, but a lot of it is artificial jewelry, and you get a lot of items for trophies, etc., which are sold here, and of course the food. We'll come to food also. Now, since we are talking of the generic area, we have to talk about Jama Masjid, which is the heart of Shah Jahanabad, even today. Now, Jama Masjid was built after the building of Shah Jahanabad. When Shah Jahan shifted here, the population also from Delhi, Agra shifted to Delhi. And this earlier they would pray in Fatehpuri Mosque or the other smaller mosques, but he realized, the emperor, that he needed a big congregational mosque. And so in 1656, the Jama Masjid was built. Its original name was Jahanuma, or World Reflecting Mosque. And it was built on a small hillock. As you can see, there are so many steps going up. It was built on a small hillock called Bhojla Pahadi. And you know the reason for that? Because the emperor's throne could not be higher than the imam's pulpit. So obviously, the emperor, the Mughal emperor, called themselves Zille Ilahi, or shadow of God on earth. So obviously, if they were the shadow, they had to be lower. So the main congregational mosque of Shah Jahanabad was built on a hillock. The foundation stone, of course, was laid by the emperor himself. And it has three grand gateways. You can see two of them here. It had three grand gateways, which are still there. And the mosque is more or less intact. It is still a place which draws lots of tourists as well as worshippers. And it's these, you can see the three domes here. These are two pictures which I have taken. This is, of course, from British Library. It's got black and white stripes. The dome is of marble. The whole thing is of red sandstone with marble plaques on which verses from the Quran are written. It's not only a place for worshipping and for tourists, but it's a place where the locals also come and play around, because the whole city has become so congested that you need some place for the youngsters. And this is, of course, the pool from which they do their ablution. Now you can climb onto the top of this minaret. I did, and from this minaret I have taken these pictures. And this is actually the cover of my book. Now inside the mosque, if you're going to be saying an Islamic prayers are according to the times of the sun. So you had a sundial as well as a globe built here. And inside this mosque is also a dargah, or a shrine, where some relics from the time of from the 8th and 9th century are kept here. This is a copy of the Holy Quran, said to be from the 10th century. This is a cover of the Holy Kaaba in Mecca. And this is a sheet with various formulas on it, which these formulas lead to, these are chronograms actually, which tell you the verses from the Quran. Now these are some old Havelis, because what was this area if not all about Havelis? So from here you can see, this is of course the Chandi Chawk, the Chole Bature. You can see people sitting here and you can see the masjid in the background. Here you can see the markets. This is again a 17th century Haveli, which has of course seen better days. And I will take you to some more Havelis. Here is a Haveli called Chandi Ki Haveli, which has fallen into disrepair, as you can see. But interestingly, one part of it, there are people still living, and there are children playing here. Now, in 1947, at the time of the partition of India, many families from Old Delhi left for Pakistan. and their houses then became the Havelis were divided into various smaller portions for the refugees who came. This is called Razia Begum Ki Haveli. It used to be very grand again once upon a time, but now, as you can see, this is what it is. This Haveli has, retained its original flavor because the original residents still live here. They've been living here. This family that lives in this, it's called Qazi Ki Haveli. They have been living here from the 17th century, from when Shah Jahan shifted here. And this is beautifully maintained. The mosque over here, the family lives on top and around on over this. This portion of it is a mosque. Now this, of course, is the famous Ghalib Ki Haveli, where Ghalib lived after 1857, and it was also occupied and had become a workshop, but the Delhi government got it vacated, and now they've restored it and put up some things belonging to Ghalib as well as a bust of him. Now, most of you would have heard of Diwali and Dussehra. During Dussehra, there is a Sawaari which goes out through the lanes of Old Delhi, celebrating the return of Lord Ram and Lakshman and Sita ji from the Banbas or the exile. And after that, it goes on to Diwali. Now, the famous food. Now, the food of Shah Jahanabad during the Mughal era was, they would have green grams. Chole Bature was brought by the Punjabi refugees in 1947. Now, the easiest way to earn money, if you are hard up or if you suddenly had to leave in an emergency, as most of the refugees did, is to put up a small stall and start selling food. And this is how Chole Bature came into Delhi and North India and suddenly gained popularity. And these people from putting up small stalls have now got huge shops. So Chole Bature, and this is the puffed flat bread that you see here is called Bature. This chickpea is called the Chole. Then you have, in 1940, there was a shop that was made, and it's so crowded that you can't stand there. It sells Dahi Bhalle, or a kind of dumpling made out of lentil with curds or yogurt. Then, of course, you have the famous Jalebi Wala that was built in 1884. This again started the same way, that a young man or in his at the age of about 19 or 20 came from one of the small cities near Delhi and started selling jalebis on a small basket kept on his head. That became so popular that he opened up a small shop. Now this small shop has got a huge turnover. These people are the family is now one of the richest families of this area, but they still sell, of course they do other businesses and export, but they still sell jalebis from this small shop called Old Famous Jalebi Wala. And the jalebi is to die for. Now next, near this is again a gali called Parathe Wali Gali. Now Parathe is a kind of flat bread which is normally shallow fried, but in Parathe Wali Gali they deep fry it, and they have got over 20 kinds of stuffings which they put inside it, including okra, lime, sweet, a kind of condensed milk, of course potatoes and cauliflower, etc. And people come here from far and wide just to eat this parathe. There are now 3 of them, all branches of the original parathe wala. Then you have the famous kareem, which is famous for its non-vegetarian, for its nihari, and for its paya, and for its mutton stew. This was established by Muhammad Azizuddin in 1911 when the Delhi Darbar was held, which is when the British king came to India and held a darbar. And around that time, because all the people came, the nobles and the kings of the small principalities, everybody came to Delhi to pay respect to the King of England, who was, of course, the Emperor of India. So ordinary people came, and rulers came, and nobles came, and so obviously there had to be a huge there was a huge demand for food. And he it is said that this Muhammad Azizuddin used to be a cook in the royal kitchens, Of course, those royal kitchens were disbanded after 1857, and he came here and started selling from us in a small stall. And today he has one of the biggest chains of food that cater to Delhi, and it is typically food which you find in Delhi. Then this is one of my favorite haunts. These are Seekh kebabs. If you've been to India, you would have seen them. He is a fourth generation who has been selling in this particular place in a small alcove under a mosque. He has been selling for over 100 years, and he sells from this small place. That what you see here is about almost the area that he has, and there's a huge line in front of him also. Then you have chaat, which is again very famous. Chaat is spicy and salt. And you have more jalebis here. This time the jalebi is of a different color, made from a different material, and gulab jamuns. And during Ramzan, there is a particular sharbat or juice that is sold, which is called Mohababt ka sharbat, or the juice of love. It's made with milk and watermelon and rooh afza, which is a typical Indian soft drink. Not a soft drink, I should say. It's a typical Indian drink. And this is the city for which it has been said that this was a city of love, in which people lived who were the chosen of their time. This is one of the Havelis. Again, once you go inside, it is a warren of small places, but outside is still grand. These are two daily wagers who have sat here to enjoy a break in the afternoon. And I came upon them just then. Now, what this basically means is that Delhi, that Delhi was filled with beautiful faces, and each face looked like a painting done by a portrait by a master. So I hope you enjoyed this walk into Delhi, Old Delhi, Shah Jahanabad. And if anybody has any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Ma'am, stop your screen sharing now so we can see you again.
Oh, I have stopped screen sharing. I haven't.
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe you can close it. Close the window. Yeah, now it is okay.
Welcome back. So thank you very much. I think we just perfectly enjoyed this little walk. I think I was feeling so homesick that I would like to jump to the Chandi Chawk, especially try all kinds of sweets there. So thank you very much. And I would like to ask our audience if anyone has any question. Now this is a time to ask. You can ask in the chat box also if you feel so. Okay, Emisha would like to ask.
Yeah, something. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you very much for this nice guidance. Oh, it disappeared. Ranaji disappeared from the monitor. So anyway, can you hear me?
Yes, just go ahead.
So my question is the following. When we travel to different parts of the world, we can see that the cities are aggressively growing and eat up sometimes very valuable places which were important in the ancient times. There is this redevelopment project of Chandi Chawk. So doesn't it jeopardize the old city modernization, modifications, which happens in many places? And is it the part of the World Heritage?
The old city of Old Delhi is not part of is not a heritage site. Within it, the Red Fort is. Now, Delhi suffered, this part of Delhi, the Old Delhi, suffered a lot in 1857, as I had mentioned, because after the British won and the Mughal emperor was exiled, large parts of the city there was reconstruction, there was realignment because they wanted to have broader roads, they wanted to make troop movement easy. And then in 1947, when India was divided, a lot of people migrated from India to Pakistan, residents of Old Delhi, the refugees who came from Punjab, from Pakistan, came and settled in over here, and the the whole how the way of living changed. The Havelis gave way to many people living inside one Haveli, and newer shops, some shops opened up. The character of that entire area changed. Today, of course, there is a lot of effort to try and maintain whatever there is, but harm has already been done, and that was done before everything was put in place. Now, recently, in the past 2 years, they have tried to stop traffic from on Chandi Chawk, and as I showed you, there's a redevelopment plan where they paved it with red sandstone and tried to make it a walk-only place for walkers only, pedestrian.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Another problem is that some of the Havelis, because the roads were congested, these were built for horses. Now, we can't take big cars into it. So many of the residents who lived in Old Delhi have shifted to New Delhi. And they have given their Havelis on rent for warehouses. So where a place which was essentially residential has now become commercial.
I see. Yeah, thank you.
Ranaji, is there any plan to reconstruct the channel in the mid of the Chandi Chowk as it was?
No.
Number one.
No, they can't.
The other question I wanted to ask you about the water supply. So if there was a channel, it means that in those days there was excellent water supply. So how it was? Do you know about that?
This canal, the Neher, Faiz Neher, or the canal of munificence, it was built actually in the 14th century by Firoz Shah Tughlaq. It fell into disrepair. When Shah Jahan, during the reign of Akbar, it was revived once, and then when Shah Jahan decided to build a city here, he gave orders for it to be cleaned up. And of course, it was not only cleaned up, it was expanded, etc. It took water from the Jamuna. The river Jamuna flows behind the Red Fort, and part of Shah Jahanabad is built along the river. So now the river has shifted to quite some distance away from that place. But earlier it used to flow just under the Red Fort, and it was walking distance. There are so many people I know whom I talked to when I was writing my book, who told me that when they used to go to school, they would sit with their feet hanging onto the river. Now the river has shifted at least half a kilometer. So the water for the city and for this Neher came from Jamuna.
Thank you. I don't know, do we have any other question or remarks? No one. Everyone is very shy.
Another, reason, the saying clue to the Neher comes from the fact that the city was a walled city. It was enclosed by 13 gates. And out of these 13 gates, 3 gates were named after the ghats or the bathing platforms of the river. So one was Nigambodh Ghat, one was Raj Ghat. Raj Ghat is still there. The Samadhi or the memorial to Mahatma Gandhi is in Raj Ghat. Of course, the gateway is no longer there. And there was one Kela Ghat. So you had 3 gateways dedicated to the river, which opened onto the river.
I see. Now I feel to really go again and walk again in the Chandi Chowk, because I was there quite long ago. So for me, this is a surprise to see the pictures you showed now, and I really feel the temptation to just run there. Yeah. So I don't know. Do we have some other question, or Tanujaji? Would you like to add something?
So what I felt was, of course, that it's very important to know about our ancient history and ancient heritage. In the humdrum of modern life, when you have all these big buildings which have cropped up around us, business centers and modern buildings, modern roadways, you have metros. So the ancient monuments and heritage definitely get submerged in that. But it is a commendable job that writers and authors and art historians like Rana Safvi are exploring to revive our heritage and talk about it. So when we have some heritage walks around it, some tourist walks, then also the maintenance of those places become imperative. I have myself been to that area and not I have not actually gone through it and seen through it the way Rana ji showed us this beautiful persona of Chandni Chawk. And now that I go back to India, I think I'm going to see Chandni Chawk with an absolutely new point of view, including the food, of course. I'm really getting very hungry now. So thank you. Thank you so much for this beautiful virtual walkthrough in through the old Delhi, particularly Chandni Chawk, and I'm sure those who would be visiting India, they would definitely go and see Jama Masjid and all those beautiful places. Thank you so much for sharing us the these very intricate and minute details which only a writer or maybe a photographer can see from his or her point of view. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was such an honor to be with you all.
Thank you so
So
much.
thank you again, and also that you are with us in this very very late evening, in the midnight actually, from Delhi. So really हमारे शब्द कम पड़ते हैं कि हम आपको कैसे धन्यवाद कहें, लेकिन फिर भी आशा है कि कभी आपको फिर आमंत्रित कर पाएंगे और
जरूर,
हम
इंशाल्लाह।
आपके साथ दिल्ली के किसी दूसरे कोने में जाएंगे और वो भी आपके साथ घूमकर देखेंगे. Thank you very much. Nagyon szépen köszönöm mindenkinek, aki ma megosztotta velünk az estéjét, hogy itt voltak velünk a Magyar-Indiai Baráti Társaság esti programján. Szeretném megkérni még egyszer azokat, akik még nem írták be a nevüket a chatboxba, hogy szíveskedjenek, például a Krisztina, hogy milyen Krisztina, mi az ő neve, szükségünk van rá a társaság szempontjából. Viszont még egyszer akkor nagyon szépen megköszönöm, hogy velünk tartott mindenki a sétán, és hát, mint hallották, remélem, hogy Rana Safvi máskor is eljön velünk, és megmutatja nekünk Delhinek esetleg valamelyik másik, talán kevésbé ismert, de nagyon érdekes részletét. Köszönöm még egyszer mindenkinek. Thank you very much. फिर मिलेंगे.